One of the things that I've been sitting with lately is this. A lot of leadership teams, they think they have a conflict problem, but what they actually have is a trust problem that they just haven't named yet. And once you're able to identify it, you'll start to see it everywhere. In an earlier video, I shared a few of the broader trends coming out of the Edelman Trust Barometer. And I want to stay with one of those ideas for a moment because I believe this is where a lot of leadership teams begin to feel tension without always knowing how to describe it or what to call it. And it's this idea that people are becoming more cautious about trusting those who see the world differently than they do. Now, I get it, that might sound like a societal trend, but it shows up very quickly inside organizations. When trust across difference gets thinner, the disagreement starts to feel different. All of a sudden, that healthy debate begins to feel more like a challenge, and the challenge begins to feel like resistance. And suddenly, that resistance sometimes gets misinterpreted as a lack of commitment. Now, I've seen leaders go down this path pretty quickly. They start thinking, are they bought in? And the real question might be, do they feel safe enough to engage? Because many times what's actually happening is that people are just trying to figure out whether they can trust the intent behind someone else's perspective. I sometimes explain it to leadership teams with a very simple visual. Imagine you have two people. They can be looking at the exact same situation and come to very different conclusions. One person may look at it and they see a six. Another person, they see a nine. Neither one is necessarily wrong. They're just standing in different places. The real leadership question isn't who's right. The real question is whether that team has enough trust to explore the differences in a productive way. Because when that trust is there, the disagreement actually sharpens the thinking. When that trust is missing, disagreement shuts the conversation down. And once conversation starts shutting down, alignment begins to drift. Now, this is where I believe conversations become really important for leaders because this isn't just about how people feel. This starts to show up in how the work actually gets done. One of the other findings in the report that I believe deserves more attention has to do with effort and collaboration. Now, some employees, they say they might put less effort into helping the leader succeed if that leader's beliefs or values feel very different from their own. Others, they say they would rather move to an entirely different department than report to a manager whose values don't align with theirs. Now, when leaders hear that, the conversation oftentimes turns toward culture or engagement. But I think it's important to look at it through a slightly different lens. This is also a productivity issue because when that trust shrinks, the cooperation shrinks. And when cooperation shrinks, teams begin to slow down in ways that are sometimes subtle, but they are very real. People hesitate to challenge ideas. The conversations that should happen early, they get postponed. And the initiatives that require collaboration across groups, they start to lose that momentum. One of the phrases I sometimes use with leadership teams is something that we've coined and we've termed it as a friction tax. Now, every organization has it, but when the trust gets thin, the tax gets higher. The decisions take longer, alignment takes longer, and the people spend more time navigating that tension than moving the work forward. And all of that impacts the bottom line. So when leaders say, something just something feels off. Sometimes it's not strategy. Sometimes it's not structure. Sometimes it's that trust has gotten thinner than we realize. And the way teams are working through those differences, it just isn't as strong as it needs to be. And here's the part that I believe a lot of leaders are still wrestling with. This isn't just a culture conversation, it is a leadership responsibility. And the question becomes, what role are leaders actually supposed to play in rebuilding that trust? And in my experience, that's usually where the real conversation begins.